Morning guys, hello, welcome to the University of York One Planet Week Cook Along video live. So we've got all of our ingredients ready here. I'm going to talk you through the menu. My name's David Martin, I'm the Executive Head Chef, and helping us out today as well will be Andrew Wood, the Food Development Manager. So today we are cooking a lentil dal with spinach. We have cauliflower rice, we have some coriander yogurt to go over the top. We're also doing some flatbreads, and we've got a lovely apple dessert with some lime and honey flavoured yogurt to go alongside that. So I'll go straight into the dessert actually. We're going to do the dessert first because that takes the longest to cook. So hopefully you've done a little bit of the pre-prep, and we have our puff pastry sheet here, which is about 5 centimetres deep and about 30 centimetres long. If you've bought a puff pastry that needs rolling out, then obviously you'll need to roll that out and then cut a nice long strip like this. We've got some melted butter here that we're going to brush along the length of our pastry. You can of course use vegan margarine and keep this dish vegan. If you don't have a pastry brush, you can also use the back of a spoon, will be absolutely fine. So I've conveniently got one, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to brush down the puff pastry down the full length. Don't need loads, it's just to glaze it really. And we'll let that rest. So now I'm just going to very quickly slice our apple. Red apples come across really nice in this dessert because of the nice colour, so you can use a pink lady or a gala or a Braeburn. And what you want to do is you want to cut your apple in half and then lie flat side down on your board, and very thin 1 or 2 millimetre slices we're going to cut through the apple. Don't worry about the seeds because we're cutting it that thin anyway, they'll just fall out. And you want about 9 or 10 slices of apple per person. So one apple will easily do you 3 desserts. I'll just hold that up. That's a cross section of the apple. And the apple slices, as you can see, very thin. As thin as you can get them really, half an apple. We're going to spread these out on our plate. And we just want to microwave them 30 seconds or a minute. And that will just make them soft to use in the dessert. So I'll just pop them in the microwave. So they go in the microwave for 30 seconds and have a little look at them. If they're floppy and bendable, you'll see with the presentation when we get there, but then they're good to go. So while our apples are cooking, we just want to mix together a large tablespoon caster sugar, and we've also got a little pinch of cinnamon as well also. So mix them together. You don't want to use too much cinnamon. You can just see in there, there's not much at all compared to sugar. It can be quite powerful if you use too much. We'll give that a little mix. So back to our pastry. And we're just going to flavour the pastry with cinnamon sugar from a height, so you get a nice even covering. What we can do also, we can get our ramekin or our tin or our Yorkshire pudding tray, whatever we're using to bake the dessert. You just need something about 5 centimetres diameter, about 1 inch deep. The Yorkshire pudding tin works really well. We'll brush this with a bit of the butter to stop it sticking. You can also add a little bit of parchment paper to the bottom to help later when you get it out of the oven. So now with our dessert, we're just going to overlap the apples across the length of the puff pastry. I'll hold it up in a second so you can see. You want the apple to overhang the top of the pastry, and then you want to overlap the apples as you work your way down. The 9 or 10 slices across the pastry. And the seeds are just falling out, so you can just remove them as you go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is enough. So we've got the pastry sticking out the bottom, the apples overhanging the top, and we're just going to fold up and encase the apples in our pastry. So we've still got the 30 centimetre length, and we're just tucking in. If I just hold this up, you'll get to see. You see the apples sticking out the top of the pastry? We've enveloped them in, and now we do the nice part where we roll them up for the presentation. So across the length of the apple, we're going to roll them up nice and tight. we get a beautiful pattern of an apple rose. Really, really pretty, really nice pattern. You can see the shape underneath. That might help you see how we do it. You can see the spiral of the pastry. You can see how the apples are nice and attractively rolled up like that. So we'll pop that in our line tin. I'm going to go and bake this now for about 25 minutes in a preheated oven at about 175, 180 degrees. So while I bake this, I'm going to hand over to Andrew Wood, who's going to show you how to make some flatbreads. So thank you very much.
Right, good morning everybody. Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much indeed. That apple is a cracking little dessert, that, so I can't wait for that to come out. It'll be really, really great. Right, so my name's Andrew. Good morning everybody. I'm going to show you how to make the flatbread now. So just a little bit of a recap. We've got the apple desserting. When I finish my flatbread, David will do the start the lentil Dahl. Okay, and while that's cooking, I'll finish off cooking the flatbread, and I'll make the cauliflower couscous, which is a little garnish for it. Okay, so these flatbreads are incredibly simple. Okay. All I have is a handful, or about 160 grams of self-raising flour. Okay, I've got some vegetable oil, pinch of salt, some yogurt, some natural Greek yogurt. And I'm going to put a bit of coriander in mine. You can put some chopped coriander. You can turn it into a garlic flatbread. You can add chopped parsley to it, whatever you want. Really. These are great little flatbreads which you can use for curry or anything like that. Say buying naan bread when you get curry. Really, really simple. So I'm going to start by my flour, which is in the bowl. Okay, I'm going to add a pinch of salt. Okay, a couple of tablespoons of veg oil. Now you can use lemon oil or anything like that if you want to flavour it. Okay, I'm going to just take my coriander. Okay, and just roughly put my knife through it. Peel the knife just like that, nice and simple. Okay, nice and rustic. Just throw my coriander in there. And now for the yogurt. So I've got my natural yogurt there. Okay, and this is about 5 to 6 tablespoons of Greek yogurt. Okay, all I'm going to do, you see it's in the bowl there, just throw it in. You can use a mixing machine, or you can use your hands, or just use a spoon like I'm doing here. And just want to clump it together. Just work the flour in. Okay. But what makes these breads rise a little bit is the self-raising flour. So they're not really a bread that rises like conventional bread, if you like. So they're just small flatbreads. And when you see them, just got a nice little bit of butter in them to give them a little bit of a rise. A little bit more in there. It gets to a point. I'm just going to get my hands in. Okay. So take the spoon off there like that. Okay. Just a little bit more. The rest of the yogurt. Now, just in with your hands, and all I'm doing there is just clumping it together, working it in there, clumping it together so I'm getting the dough. Don't worry about your hands being a bit sticky. Right. Just want a little bit more yogurt in there. Now it's just starting to come together. See, I've just added my yogurt gradually. What you don't want to do is throw your yogurt all in together, because if you do, you make it too wet, you end up adding more flour, and the recipe gets to be a bit too wet. Like that. I should do it now. You can just see there, about to come together with my dough. Now this just needs resting for about 10 minutes. So just bring it together there, a bit like a dishcloth if you like, just cleaning up the bowl, making sure it's nice and clean. Any little bits from my board. Okay, and there's the dough. It's come together quite nicely. It's nice and soft and a little bit tacky, and that's what you're after. Okay, so I'll just put that in my bowl there. Just let that rest for 10 minutes. Okay. David will now come back and he'll start the lentil Dahl. While this is resting, I'll see you a little bit later and I'll finish these off. And I will make the cauliflower couscous as well. So back over to David. Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. So our apple dessert is in the oven. It's only been there a few minutes, really. Andrew's made us some nice flatbread dough. Very simple, 2 ingredients really, yogurt and self-raising flour, but then any other flavours you want to put in there. So we're going to bring out some of our savoury prep together now. I'm going to do a lentil Dahl, some spinach, and then I will do some lime pickled onions, and then we have the cauliflower rice or cauliflower couscous as well. So to begin with, because it'll take slightly longer to cook, we're going to do the lentils. So over here, I've got a pan. This pan is nice and hot, so it's good to go. And we're just going to add a dash of oil into our pan. The stove is behind me, so I'll keep bringing the pan back over to show you what we're doing. So we've got our oil in, and I'm just going to add to this. I'm just going to add to that some chopped onion. So I've done a little bit of prep here, saved a little bit of time. So we've got some finely diced red onion. We've got some garlic, which I've pureed down, but you can just roughly chop 1 clove of garlic's fine. I've got some fresh chilli. I've left the seeds in to give it a bit of heat, but if you want it a bit milder, you can take the seeds out. I've got some ginger, again, chopped to the same size as the chilli. And then also, we've just got a little bit of curry powder, and I've got a vegetable oxo here. So I'll start frying this together. So first off, onions. Just hear that begin to sizzle over here. And then I'll just grab a spoon and I'll just add a little bit of our garlic, chilli and our ginger. As the heat gets to the onion, that's to smell amazing. Really hot heat, so that it's a quick recipe. Once that's going, we've got our lentils going next. We're going to add these in for a second before we add any liquid. And the way I do it, we're not weighing anything here. It's all very rustic. So this is like a large handful of lentils per person. So if you fill your hands, that's how many lentils you're going to need per one person, and that'll be quite a lot for one person. So here they go. And we'll just add to that a cup full of hot water. Again, 1 cupful of water per person is fine. You'll be able to see with this that it's quite wet. We want it quite wet so we can get it onto a boil, and the water will obviously evaporate. If it gets too dry, you can just add a bit more water, so just keep an eye on it as we cook it down. And if you're using frozen spinach, you can add that now. I've got a little bit of fresh spinach here, so I'll put mine in at the end. I've also got my curry powder. I'll put a pinch of that in right now, pinch of salt, and we'll just let it cook down and keep an eye on it. Don't use all your curry powder, because we're going to use a little bit of that with our cauliflower in a bit, okay? So I'll quickly move on to our lime pickled onions. These are a great garnish. I make them all the time, actually. You just need a really sharp knife, a red onion, which I misplaced over here. We've also got a lime. Before we start, we're just going to take the zest off the lime and reserve it for our dessert for later. So if I just take the zest off the lime quickly. If you've got a normal grater, you want to be using the fine edge for this. So our lime zest, we're going to use that later for our dessert. I'll quickly make some lime pickled onions. So very, very thin rings with the onion. And we'll break them apart into a bowl. And we're going to squeeze in the juice of half of this lime, and then a really generous pinch of salt. And the lime and the salt will actually begin to cook the onion so they'll go soft. And you can make these ahead of time as well. A bit more salt. And they will just soften in the onion, in the lime and the salt. The onions will soften, and we'll just reserve them. So we've got our lentils cooking in the background. We've got our lime pickled onions to one side. So very quickly now, I'll prep some cauliflower rice. So back to our grater. And we want to be using, again, we're not measuring anything here, a nice handful of cauliflower per person. It's quite a lot, but it will cook down as we cook away. So on our more conventional grater, on our box grater, we're just going to grate through this and push through the cauliflower into tiny little pieces like that. Don't worry if it's uneven, because it'll cook very quickly anyway. We're not trying to be too scientific with this. We're just break it up into chunks, roughly grated. Again, one nice handful per person. I'll just quickly chop a bit of coriander to go with that. Cauliflower's not able, we'll use a bit of spinach. But again, you can flavour it with whatever you like. Give it a nice colour. There we go. So we've got our cauliflower prepared. We've got our lime pickled onions prepared. We've got our lentils cooking away in the background, which I'll just go and check and then hand over to Andrew. And then the bread, Andrew will cook the breads and that'll all start coming together. So.
Right, thank you, David. Brilliant, lovely. Right, okay, so I now have got my my flatbread dough. Okay, so that's had about 10 minutes. You just see it's kind of nice and live, and the flour starting to work and start to raise a bit there, which is nice. I've got a little bit of leftover yogurt that I'm just going to use up to dress the main course with. Right. Okay, so I am now going to cook the cauliflower that Dave made, and I'm also going to cook the naan breads for you, the flatbreads for you, so we can go through that. Okay, so 2 bits of equipment you need. Okay, I'm going to fry off the cauliflower couscous in a pan. So I'm going to put a pan on the stove and just add a little bit of oil. Okay, again, doesn't really matter what oil you use. A tablespoon of oil would be great. Okay, that goes in there. Now, when it comes to cooking the flatbreads, I don't know if you can see, but I've got a rather nice flat stove on top there, like a solid top, which I'm going to use. But you can use a frying pan, and what we're going to do, we're going to dry fry these. And what I mean by that is, we're going to put them on the stove with a tiny bit of oil, so they cook like a flatbread. Okay? So just take your knife, and all I'm going to do is take the dough and cut it into 6 pieces. Okay? It's up to you. If you want them bigger, just cut them into a lot less. All I'm going to do is roll them into a little ball, like that. Okay? If you've got any left over, you can keep this in the fridge and use them the next day. And that gives me 6 pieces of flatbread like that. Okay? So take my rolling pin, a little bit of flour, and again, as Dave keeps mentioning, it's really rustic. It's nothing really exact. Okay? Take your dough like that, and just roll it out like that. Again, roll it out like that. And you just want almost like a teardrop. Size, something like that. Okay, not too big, not too small. Okay, so there's 1 there. Now I'm just going to do 3. But you finish them all off and do all 6 if you want to. The portion that we've got, we just want 3. Again, take the rolling pin, rolling away from you. I just want a teardrop size like that. Okay. Again, you don't put too much flour down because it will make them too dry. Again, squash them lightly. Roll away from you. If you haven't got a rolling pin, you can use your hands. You can use a tin foil roll, or I don't know, if you have a glass of wine, you can use a spare wine bottle as well. Okay, so there's my 3 flatbreads, which I'm about to cook in a minute. Okay, I'm going to take my cauliflower couscous, which is just there, which Dave did. So I've got my pan nice and hot, and I'm going to just add my cauliflower, season it, and start cooking that. So the cauliflower's cooking away. Now it's important you get a nice hot pan. Things like cauliflower want to be cooked really quickly, almost like roasted. It brings the flavour out really well. You don't want to be stewing it, because otherwise you'll get that, overcooked cauliflower wet taste. So it wants to be nice and fried. So it's got a bit of caramelisation to it. So now with the flatbreads, now you're going to take my flatbreads. Okay, I'm just going to, whether you're using a solid, shallow frying pan, I'm using my flat top. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on there, because what we don't want is too much frying. We just want a little bit of moist oil on top of the stove. Okay, so drop a bit of oil on there. Okay, take my 3 flatbreads. Just going to drop them on the stove like that. Now, you want a good bit of colour on these, okay? You want a little bit of caramelisation, okay? You notice that, you know, it really brings out the flavour if you've got a bit of like charbroil caramelisation to it. About 30 seconds on each side. Just keep turning them. Okay, now all I'm doing is just turning the flatbreads. See they're cooking. Okay. So just rising, just puffing up a little bit as well. But you don't need to get your pan as hot as this. My stove's really hot. Just bring the cauliflower back to you. See how the cauliflower layer is nice and browned and nice and crispy. Okay, there's a really nice texture to that. Okay, I'm just going to set that aside for 1 minute. Okay, you can see how the cauliflower's nicely coloured. All right, so set that aside for 1 second. And the flatbreads. Flatbreads are all done. Okay, that's what I'm after with the flatbreads there. Okay, nice colour on the flatbreads, a little bit of char on them as well. It gives them a nice smoky flavour, which offsets itself against the lentils. Okay, so that's the cauliflower done. That's the flatbreads done. Dave will now finish the main course. Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. So you might have just seen me in the background checking on the lentils. They need a little bit more water. They've got a really good boil on them. And also, I've just added the spinach in the last minute or so, just so that wilts down. So I'll plate up the main course. So it's very simple now. It's just an assembly job, really. We've got Andrew's wonderful flatbreads. We've got the nice and toasted cauliflower. The lentils are cooked ready, and then we'll garnish at the end. So I'll bring this together. So first off, we'll go with the cauliflower. We'll just pile it up. And you can see it's cooked down a little bit. That big handful that we had, there's a little bit less now. There's enough for one person. We have the lentils. Come together nicely. The spinach is just cooked now. But if you were using spinach, then you need to add that a little bit earlier. Even with that one handful of lentils, it's very cheap. There's probably enough for 2 people here, really, just with that alone. So they can go on there. Andrew's flatbreads, I'll go quite generous, go 2 per person. And finally, for a bit of colour and a bit of freshness, we have the lime pickled onions at the end. And what I'll do just to add, because we've got a few spare ingredients here, we can do a bit of a yogurt garnish at the end. So we've got some spare coriander, got some spare yogurt, so quickly chopped. This is a coconut yogurt. It's a fantastic product. It's completely vegan. So this dish could be made entirely vegan. We could have used a coconut yogurt in the flatbreads, which I've done before. It does work. I've got the coriander, and again, it just had that freshness against the lime from the onions. Just cool it down a little bit, nice and colourful. Now we have if you're using the cauliflower yogurt, you've got completely vegan, very cheap main meal, ready in about 15 minutes. So I will hand over to you to plate dessert, Andrew. Yep. Right.
Right, lovely. Okay, thank you, David. Right, so we are left then with the, look at that beautiful apple rose there. That's fantastic, isn't it? See how we baked it. So that's come out the oven. It's got a lovely, nice crispy base to it. And we've just sprinkled it with a little bit of ice and sugar. So really simple dessert. And you can make this beforehand if you want to. Just leave it to one side, just let it rest, and then bring it back and rewarm it a little bit later. So really simple, lovely dessert to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just do a honey and lime and yogurt dressing with it. So take this lovely coconut yogurt, okay, a couple tablespoons in there, drizzle of honey. Again, it doesn't have to be honey, you can use maple syrup, you can use whatever you want really to flavour it. The lime zest that Dave did earlier, just going to drop that in there like that. The lime just gives it a little bit of zesty flavour to it, which is really nice. Okay, take my plate. Okay, just going to drop the apple in there like that. Okay, give this a really good mix. Okay, like that. So just mix it in the bowl. So I've got my lime zest in there, my honey, my yogurt. All we're doing is just placing it on there like that. Nice and generous with it. The little apple rolls, we'll take it. And there we have the apple rose, baked apple rose, and the yogurt lime dressing. Okay, so if I just bring the dishes down in front of you now, we have, in a space of 30-40 minutes, 2 lovely, simple dishes, and hopefully you'll have just as much success as we've had today with these. Thank you. Okay, so that draws our live cookery demonstration to an end. Myself and David have thoroughly enjoyed doing it with you. What we are going to do now is open it up to any live chat if anybody's got any questions for us regarding these 2 dishes. Just wait to see if anybody's got any questions. Anybody got any questions on the pudding? Anybody got any questions on the main course at all? Or was that incredibly simple? You're all confident you can go ahead and do it. Okay, right, super, that's fine, lovely. All right, so if you do think of any questions afterwards, you can email marketing@york.ac.uk. So a couple of questions coming through now. Will you be sending out the recipe? Yes, we will be sending out the recipe. I think you've got the information for that. That's all coming out. That was great, thank you guys, lovely, thank you very much. That's kind of you, thank you. Great, and so don't forget then, okay, if you do this, recreate this dish, okay, email your pictures to marketing, and you have a chance to win a prize, okay? So if you can match or go one better than myself and David, send your photographs along, and then you can put yourself a prize, all right? Again, a big thank you. I'll hand over to David in a minute. He's worked hard today as well. Thank you very much. We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and we hope you do these dishes, and you enjoy these dishes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I have nothing to add, really. Thank you, Andrew. I really enjoyed it. So make sure you do follow the recipe and send any pictures, because we'd love to see them. And also, you may well win £100 as well. So why not do it? It's a cheap, healthy lunch to do, and you can win a good prize doing it. So I'll sign off there. Thank you very much, guys.